Well, good evening. Can you guys hear me? Looks like everybody's muted.
Yep, I can hear you.
All right,
I
cool.
can hear you.
All right, awesome. Well, good evening. Can you guys hear me? Oh, hang on a sec. Everybody's muted.
Yep, I can hear you.
All right,
I
cool.
can hear you.
All right, awesome. Well, good evening. Can you guys hear me? Oh, hang on a sec. Turn that off. All right, mic check. Can everybody hear me now?
Gotcha.
Gotcha. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on. I'm waiting for Carrie Payne to jump on here. Carrie's going to be one of our judges this year. And I told her 6:30.
There she is.
There's Carrie.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
All right. Well,
My wild ones.
how many dogs you got now?
Three. Three crazy ones. Two labs and an English field cocker.
There you go.
All right, Tracy, how are you doing? Haven't seen you in a while.
I'm doing very well, Dave.
Staying out of trouble?
I'm having to work, so that keeps you out of trouble.
Well, that's no fun.
See, I'm waiting for Derek Watson to jump on here too.
I see him there.
Oh, you do?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, good. All right. All right. All right. Looks like we got the gang all here. Let me. All right. Well, let's just jump into it. Let's start with some introductions first, because there's some new people on that we don't know. I see. Well, Tracy, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, I'm Tracy Stubbs. I'm from Union Springs, Alabama. I know a lot of folks out there. I've been out there and judged in that area several times with Carrie, and yeah, it's one of my favorite areas of the country to come to is Montana. I can't bring my wife there because then she's going to want to move there. But I've had labs for probably about 30 years now. Very involved with HRC and the HRC Grand, and just love all things dog.
All right, awesome. And then we got Matt Emerson. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody, please?
All right. I'm Matt Anderson. I guess they call me the retriever organizer for SRS. I kind of head all the marshals and keep everything rolling in the SRS game as far as the retrievers go. I also train dogs for a living
Oh.
when I'm not working all these SRS events. I'm from Arkansas. Other than that, I just uh, working on SRS and training dogs.
So they say you're the one to talk to about the rules. So tell us about what your involvement with the SRS and the rules.
Well, um, I've been with SRS for probably 20 years on and off, but for the last 12 to 14 years, I've been in my current role, which is, like I said, retriever organizer. I'm basically work for Shannon, kind of her right-hand man as far as the retrievers go, and I'm a member of the committee, but I've been doing it for a long time, and you know, do a lot. I probably do 12 to 15 events a year for SRS, and feel like I know the rules and stuff pretty well, and you know, So hopefully I can answer any questions y'all have.
Okay. And then Derek Watson, you're with the SRS and you're going to be, what do they call it, Marshal for this year's
Yeah,
event?
well, yeah, I hope to be that. Haven't really talked to Matt about it, but
You will be.
okay.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, I did it last year, really had a good time up there. You guys did a great job hosting that event. I'm also on the grant committee, so I know Tracy very well. So that'll be fun. I also want to thank Carrie for last year. She did a great job uh, judging up there, and I'm hoping that we'll see you back. Uh, I've been involved in primarily HRC, but I've also been involved in SRS since 2005. So I'm also on the committee as well as Matt is. So.
All right, great. Well, thank you guys for joining us. This will be a great benefit to our Trader State Retriever Club members and those thinking about coming up and running the SRS this summer. So let's start with some basically, I guess let's jump into the rules and the new rules. So Matt, what are the new rules that you want to share with us?
Trying to think, as far as you guys from a, handler level, I don't think there's a lot different than there was last year. There's a few, administrative things as far as, you know, what you can and can't do as a club from your amateur side. You can make the amateur division a quote unquote owner handler only, where before an amateur could come in and run two dogs that he didn't own as part of the dogs that he's running. You have an option as a club not to do that now, where make the amateur have to actually own the dog that he's running or be on the paperwork as an owner in order to be able to run the amateur division. Trying to think, Derek, am I missing anything that rule changes? I don't think there was actually anything that was very significant from the club level.
No, I think you're right, Matt.
Okay, well then I'll kick it off with the first question then. I'm just curious why the poison bird is so prevalent in the SRS game. How did that come to be, and why do you why is it at such a higher level than you see at your weekend events?
I'll give my opinion on why it is. I feel like y'all are in a unique position where you don't have quite as many entries usually as one of our events. So last weekend we were in Alabama and we had 74 dogs. You have to put a test out there that can create separation between the dogs within a that also happens in a timely manner. You can't come out there and have a 10, 12-minute test in the first and the second series because you would never get done. So I think a lot of times, our first series was a field trial like series. It's straight up triple. Very, very good test and very, very difficult. You get around usually to the hunt test side though. These dogs are so good that it's really hard a lot of times to throw a triple and a blind out there that gets enough separation to allow movement between dogs. Like our second series was a grand, style HRC style hunt test. We threw the triple. There was a poison bird in there. Basically, we threw the triple. You had to pick up one mark of your choice. The go bird, and this was strategic in the way we did it, in that, we wanted you to make a decision. You could pick up the go bird, which was out on the left, and not there wasn't, the blind wasn't in play at that point. After you picked up one bird, you had to run the blind. Well, there was a bird that was definitely in play on the blind if you didn't pick it up first. So you had a decision to make. You could come over to the right-hand bird, pick it up, and at that point you didn't really have a poison bird on the blind. Or you could choose to pick up the go bird, which, obviously is easier to pick up, because the dog just saw it fall. I feel like it's just a tool to be able to get separation, um, and make a more challenging test a lot of times. We also use it to get the handler involved in the strategy of what he's doing. Just like in that situation. If I felt like I had a problem picking the poison bird up, especially in that situation, I'm gonna, select off that go bird and go pick the right hand bird up. You know, sometimes it's used to try to, you know, weed the field down a little bit, from in the first series. If you've got a full field of 80 dogs and, we can throw a poison bird and maybe not have to run some of those in the second series. But Derek, Tracy, y'all have anything to add on that?
Well, the only thing I would add, Matt, is, and I get called all the time on when I judge HRC tests, and I've been doing it for a long time. But that's a very common hunting skill.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I used to say back when I hunted all the time, I had people ask if they could come hunt with me. And one of the first questions I asked them, they wanted to bring a dog. And I said, can your dog run a poison bird blind? If they said no, I'd tell them, no, you can't come hunting with me. Because I usually had the only dog there. And there was a lot of times I hunted with 10 to 12 people. So if you got a dog that cannot run past 6 dead birds on the water 20 feet from them, then you're not gonna help pick up the ducks that you need to pick up. So I think I agree with what you just said, but it also brings that hunting savvy portion of dog training into that. So you can tell pretty quick the dogs that hunt and the dogs that don't hunt by doing a poison bird blind. Or the people that haven't trained, they don't hunt a lot and they haven't trained for that. Tracy?
Agree with what both these guys are saying, and as a judge, when you're setting these things up at the SRS, is you're looking for that element of the test that ups the level of difficulty and gives you that separation. And I think it's a big tool there. And if you haven't trained with the plastic birds and done those things, that poison bird can get you. And
Yep.
so it's definitely an element to separate dogs. In the end, that differs the SRS from any of the other hunt test venues that we run is we are going to eliminate dogs. We're going to pick winners.
Yep.
And that's what brings it into the similarities to the field trial world and all of that is, we are definitely going to pick a winner. And so it's just an added element.
Yep.
Now, is typically the poison bird its own series typically, or can you mix that in with one of the other series? Like last year, we ran a poison bird and it was just one series, one of the 4.
It can be mixed in anywhere. Like ours was in the like I said, in a grand style setup. And then our third series had 2 poison birds in it, but it was just a big water blind. And we, in that situation, we're just using it to make the blind more difficult,
Yeah.
Because like Tracy said, at the end of the day, we're looking for a winner. We're not looking for somebody to pass or fail.
Yep. That's
And
the
if you
big
pick up the
difference.
poison bird, you failed.
Well, I will say this, what we did last year at Treasure State, and I thought Carrie and them did a good job with this, is that they realized that there was a lot of people that didn't really understand the SRS, didn't really know what it was all about. So instead of DQing the people that picked up the poison bird, I think, Carrie, y'all gave them 100-point penalty, wasn't that right? So they could still play. And it was in the second series, I think.
That was the third series.
Third series, okay.
Yeah.
So they could still, continue to play. They just had 100 points if they picked up the poison bird blind. So it's not always a DQ.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be a DQ.
Do what?
I said it doesn't have to be a DQ. Like Derek said, you can put a point value in picking that up, and like in y'all's situation, that's definitely the way to go. You didn't have quite as many dogs,
Yeah,
but you almost make it in that situation from a judge's standpoint a numeric DQ in that, yeah, they get to keep playing, but they're just they at that point the points kind of put them out of reach anyway.
that's right.
Well, in our case, we had some people handle, never picked up that poison bird, but they would have been better off to pick up the poison bird and just
And
go
just
back.
go along.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right.
It was kind of a smidge bit of a mean poison bird.
So explain that so people have a better understanding, because you pick up the poison bird, you get a 100-point penalty, but you say if they got more points if by
On-
struggling to get
On the
around it?
handling, well, I don't know, do you have your drawing that you had up? Because it was the way, once they got out in the opening, they went one way or another. People stayed on the mat rather than getting off the mat and handling. And so it was kind of a case of learning how to decide what is the best poison, I guess, in this poison bird situation.
Yeah.
Because we had them start off on a mat, but we did not tell them they had to stay on the mat. And if they would have just moved over, if the handlers would have moved over, their dogs could have circled out. But if they hit a certain point where those dogs could still see that poison bird, even if they were beyond it, they went right back towards that bird. And
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 picked up the bird. It was, there was some strategy that had to be placed. And once people decided they weren't going to have them pick up that poison bird, they decided to fight with them through the points. And sometimes it got a smidge bit ugly, I guess.
And that kind of goes back to what,
What she's saying is that you're in trying to handle away from that poison bird, you're accruing a lot of points in whistles and cast refusals, and she's saying I think sometimes it'd have been better off just to pick up the bird and take the 100 points and roll, move on. And usually that's the case if you pick it up. Like if you had any success in trying to handle off of it, but then it didn't happen, those whistles and cast refusals add up real quick.
yeah, they do.
And I don't know, since it was an actual duck, whether that played more of a difference, because we had a pro there who plays in the SRS, and he had made the comment that using the actual birds made things more difficult. So I don't know whether that's actually the case or not, but
I think it probably adds a little bit to it, but I also feel like, people say, oh, you're using plastic, it's not the same. These guys that run SRS a lot and train day in and day out with the Avery birds, the dogs can smell them. You can't tell me they can't, because I've seen it a million times that, they're running past it on the downwind side, and they may be 40 yards from it. And it's different in that they know that's what they're looking for. They train enough with it. They've gone to enough tests that they know that, we're at this type of event and I'm looking for plastic. But they can smell it I would say almost as good as a bird.
I agree, Matt.
Now I've seen
Mike,
also come into that event and that don't pick up plastic ever at these SRS, or don't run SRS, and a dog gets to one of these events and then he knows he's at an event like the Grand or a field trial or a hunt test, and he's looking for a bird because he knows he's at an event. So it can also go on the flip side of you're throwing plastic out there, and that dog thinks he's at an event and he's not supposed to be picking up plastic, and he'll blink one of those plastic birds. That's a guy that doesn't run this event a lot, and they don't understand it. They get up there and like, man, my dog's never blinked a bird in his life. Well, he thinks he's at a hunt test, he thinks he's supposed to find a bird. So
Margot asked a question, how many dogs are required for an owner, I think an owner handler amateur?
But the qualifications don't change. It's still 30 total dogs, and of that, you have to have, at least 20 pro dogs for it to qualify as an open, at least 10 amateur dogs for it to qualify as an amateur, but you still, the total number 30 is there. That side of it didn't change. You can just change the requirement of the amateur dog entry, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So another topic I want to cover is on, Carrie talked about this the last time we were going over that podcast of mine with the poison bird, but the topic of wandering. And I did see some videos from the SRS talking about wandering, how you can get so many points every 3 seconds your dog is wandering. How is that judged? And give us more information on what you call wandering.
So wandering by definition is establishing a hunt outside of the fall area. Once a dog goes out on the mark and shows you, establishes a hunt, he shows you that this is where he thinks the bird is. We're still judging the mark as a whole, but when the judge is sitting there and he gets to the point where he says, you know what, this dog should have handled. Like, I've seen enough. At that point, he gets 20 points for the mark, and then that's where wandering starts. The longer the handler lets him, hunt the field out there and he's not in the area to fall, we got to be assessing penalties. We can't just sit there and watch a dog dead hunt the field and not, penalize him for that. So that's kind of my best definition of wandering. Tracy, Derek, y'all have?
No, I agree with what you said, Matt. It's the dog hunting outside of the area of the fall.
But
And
it's not just hunting outside the area. We take what we call a wait and see approach on
yep,
marking. Okay, so I want that dog to go out there. Obviously, he needs to make the area of the fall, establish a hunt, find the bird. And our marking score comes. That's where that comes from 0 to 20. We're putting a numeric value on the quality of the mark.
yep,
And that's where we differ from a field trial is, they're just judging the mark, but we're also judging the mark. We're judging the line, we're judging the hunt. But it doesn't change, it doesn't change what we're looking for. At the end of the day, we're looking for a dog that marks the bird, goes out there, establishes a hunt, and finds a bird. The better he does that, the better score he gets.
that's right.
But from a handler standpoint, if you let that dog go out and the dog never makes the area of the fall, establishes a hunt, and obviously shows you that he didn't know where it was at, we're going to watch that for a little while. And if you intervene as a handler and handle to the bird like you probably should at that point, the dog doesn't know where he's at, then you're not going to get penalized with wandering penalties. But if you want to take the chance that he's going to work it out, and he goes out there and he hunts and he hunts and he hunts, and the judge is sitting there going, this ain't good. So he's going to score him 20 for the mark score, and then wandering is cumulative too. I mean, it can grow. The longer you wander, the more points you get.
That's
And
right.
two judges are sitting there talking to each other, and they're like, "Hey, wandering is kind of like disturbing cover. A faster dog is going to disturb cover quicker than a slower dog. Wandering is going to accumulate faster for a fast dog than it does a slow dog. Does that make sense? Like, you're going to get a fast dog is going to get wandering points quicker and more than a slow dog because they're basically covering the same amount of ground. They're not covering the same amount of ground. A faster dog is going to cover more ground and disturb more cover and wander faster than a slow dog.
Yeah, so I was curious because in the rules, I think it says wandering is a 5-point penalty, but it just sounded like that was it. It's just one 5-point penalty.
No,
No, it accumulates.
the longer you wander, the more wandering penalties you get.
That's right.
All right. I'm noting that. But there's
Yeah,
no
and I
penalty
thi-
for, there's no penalty for a handle in the area?
What did you say, Tracy?
I think,
We'll
yeah,
go
we
back to that.
kind of talked about it on one of the others there, Matt, is this is that strategy. You know,
Mhm.
do I let my dog
Yeah.
keep hunting that unproductive area and see if he works it out, or do I get involved early, you know, and get that? There has to be a strategy in the SRS, you know, and not just let them hunt and just continue to disturb everything and drag it out.
But what you were saying, yes, it's just like at the Grand or at a HRC hunt test. If you make the area of the fall and establish a hunt and tell us that you knew where that bird was, but for some reason you can't come up with it, and the handler makes a good decision and handles in the area without letting the dog leave, then yes, you're not given that 20-point penalty for a handle to the area.
But you get the 2 points for the whistle and
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So the way I explain it, you've got a mark score, which every mark gets a mark score between 0 and 20. And yes, Margo, the max score for the mark is 20, but that's where the wandering comes in. You can you can pick the bird up without a handle and get more than 20. Because eventually, heck, if we let that sucker hunt all day, I mean, he probably gonna come up with it. But that's not what we want to see. That's not productive. That's not what we want to see. But if that dog goes out, makes the area of the fall, establishes a hunt, and shows us, I knew where that bird was, but for some reason I can't come up with it, and the handler makes a good decision and handles in the area, he's not going to be charged the 20-point penalty. So what I was saying before, you've got the mark score, which is 0 to 20. Everything else is a penalty point. It's like golf. You're getting, the higher the score, the worse the job was. So you get your mark score, and then every whistle, every cast refusal, every wander, everything adds up to your score at that point and makes, the worse job you do, the higher points you get.
So Matt, real quick, so let's say your dog's headed to the mark and you see he's not even gonna come close.
Mhm.
You stop and you get a handle to the area. Do you automatically get a 20 for the mark?
No.
Okay. All right.
So you think about it, and I don't know if some of you guys run the AKC. AKC gives you a point value on the mark between 0 and 10. 10 being as good as it can get, and 0 being as bad as it can get. It's kind of the same deal, but we do 0 to 20, and 20 is a bad job, where 0 is a good job. Now, on the mark, if you get involved early because you see that the dog is not you don't think he's going to be productive, and you get involved, you should be rewarded as a handler for making a good decision early. And the mark score is very subjective from the judge's standpoint. We try to make it as consistent as possible from judge to judge. I want Margot to walk up to the line and run a mark and somewhat feel like she's got a pretty good idea of what she scored on that mark, just from a consistency standpoint. But it's hard because, once again, it's subjective, and Tracy or Carrie or whoever's sitting there watching that dog, they have a different opinion on what's good and what's desirable, what's good, what's bad. So, but as a whole, from SRS, and that's one of the things that I've tried my hardest to do, is get some consistency in what we're doing from a judging standpoint on marking, because that's really the only subjective part of the whole deal. Everything else is a cast refusal is a cast refusal. It's a little subjective, and from a judge's eye on whether, well, like a scallop there's different things that goes into it that can be subjective, but for the most part, a cast refusal is a cast refusal. A whistle refusal is, there are some subjective things that go into it, but we ought to be pretty, accurate on that stuff as far as, knowing a whistle is a whistle, you know. But Margot, that answer your question?
It did. I mean, in our first series, we had a triple, kind of a, it was like a field trial triple, kind of like a qualifying triple.
Sure.
And once the birds went down, you were told um, if you chose to not pick up the go bird, because the go bird, once they went left for the go bird, the other two guns retired. And if you chose to not pick them up, I think there was like a 50-point penalty per bird if you picked up those white coat marks before, out of order, so to speak. So the long bird at the very end of the field, it's the mark from hell. It's jacked up more all age bird dogs. Every time they throw that mark in a field trial, they want to peel off and go to the right to a big wide opening. And in my particular case, Flurry started to head towards that opening, and I saw it, and I didn't think she'd ever recover. So I stopped and handled her. So my question was, if they don't even make the area to fall at all, do they automatically get a 20 for the mark and then the handling accrues on top of that? I guess that was my question.
Every handle is not a 20-point marking penalty, no.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Because we consider this a team sport. And as a handler, if you see that things aren't going well and you intervene at a good time, we're going to give you some credit for that.
Okay.
Yep.
So in that particular case, how would that mark, what kind of a number would that mark even get? Because the dog never made the area to fall.
Exactly. But, so like I said before, we're judging the mark as a whole, but we're also judging the line to the mark. So what I tell my judges a lot of times is when that handler blows the whistle, had that dog auto-corrected and made a good decision and went and got the bird, what would you have given it as a marking score?
Yep, that's what I do too.
And it's kind of a hard thing to grasp. I mean, it's one of those, once you do it a few times, you kind of get a feel for it. And a lot of guys, judges that come in that judge other venues think, well, man, the minute he blows a whistle, obviously the dog didn't mark the bird, so we're going to give him 20 on the marking score. That's not really the way we do it, because like I said, we want it to be a team sport, and we want you to be involved and make decisions. It's not like a field trial where the minute you blow the whistle is doomsday. We want to give you credit for making a good decision.
I saw in the rules where it said a resend is a DQ, automatic DQ. Is that correct?
So, and there's some confusion. I think we had it last weekend between the difference between a no-go and a resend. All right. A no-go is you call the dog's name or you say back and the dog just doesn't move. A resend, the dog leaves the line and then turns around and comes back. At any major stake, whether it be HRC, finished, or the Grand, or a AKC Master or Senior Test, if the dog leaves the line and turns around and comes back, you're out.
Yep.
Now we do leave a little latitude from the judge's side of judging confusion. So you call the dog's name and there's a noise or something, and the dog takes a couple of steps and kind of, freaks out and turns around. Like, from a judging standpoint, you have the ability to call that confusion and be okay with it and give them another send. Now, from a no-go standpoint, say on a blind or a mark, we don't distinguish the difference between a no-go on a blind or a mark. A no-go is a no-go. We give you 2 freebies. And so I go up and I say, dead bird, back, the dog doesn't go, back, the dog doesn't go. The third time, if he doesn't go, you're out. Same way on a mark. I come up, call Fido's name, Fido doesn't go. I call it again, Fido, he doesn't go. You better, get your stuff together at that point, because one more time and you're done. And I feel like we're pretty generous in that standpoint.
Well, I can see where amateurs are not used to running 300 or 400 yard
Mhm.
marks, and they'll blast that dog's name, and that dog will go over, turn
The
around, and look
dog
at him
kind of
like,
freaks out.
"What the hell did you just yell at me for?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Now's the time to jump in.
I want to know how you judge a dog that falls out of the mud hut.
So that needs to be clarified in the handlers meeting. Um, you know, the way I look at it, once you put the dog in the hut, he's supposed to be there until we send him.
It's kind of an inside joke, Matt.
Oh.
My dog fell out of the mud hut on the third mark because she was leaning out so far.
Mhm. Yep. So, hopefully that was clarified in the handlers meeting.
It was. It was.
Yeah, it was.
She got a penalty.
Yeah, it was.
I was okay with it. Honestly, we had so much fun. I mean, we were just flapping around, having no idea what we were doing, but we were having a blast doing it.
Well, for new folks that are thinking about jumping into this, describe the 4 series that they could face on a weekend event.
Describe the hunt
Well,
savvy
like a field trial one,
It
one's a
can-
hunt test, one's a hunt savvy. I mean, just give us the rundown of what they could see.
The 4 series could, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a hunt savvy. So basically, you're going to run 4 different series. One of them, so the first and the second series, one of them has to be a hunt test like scenario. One of them has to be a field trial like scenario. Now, don't be confused that this is a hunt test or a field trial, because it's not. The rules, of a normal field trial where, the judge releases you, you can't talk to the dog, all those things, they don't apply. This is SRS. We just like to give those guys that run these other venues something similar to what they're doing in that. So you take a guy like Tracy that runs more HRC stuff, and I'm just assuming this is the case. Derek, Derek runs a lot of HRC stuff.
Yep.
He's going to have a little bit of an edge in that particular series over a guy that comes in that mainly runs field trials. We want to give each of them an equal opportunity, hopefully, to the best of our ability, to show their strengths in that particular series. Does that make sense? So one of those first two's got to be a hunt test, one's got to be a field trial. After that, it's pretty wide open. Normally, you're going to have a hunt savvy in one of those last 2 series, either the third or the 4th series, and it doesn't have to be the 4 series. It usually is, simply because usually the hunt savvy is more involved and takes more time. You're usually going to have more marks, more blinds, a lot of stuff going on that's out of the ordinary. We try to make hunt savvy as much like hunting as possible. We're going to use props, whether it be a boat, a bow gunner, you and your buddy are hunting, a ton of decoys, multiple birds coming out of one gun station at the same. I mean, there's that. A lot of judges like coming in and judging SRS because they have a lot more latitude to do things that they can't necessarily do at a weekend hunt test or a weekend field trial. Usually, the other series is going to be a combination of the 2, field trial, hunt test, or the judge's discretion, whatever they want to do. That's where SRS really comes out, is in the 3rd and the 4th series. The first 2, the first and the second, are usually going to be pretty similar to something you've seen before, but does not. And we use the word "like" in our rules for a specific reason, that it is not a hunt test. It is not a field trial. It's SRS, but it's, the field trial series is going to have white coats in the field. I mean, that's the field trial so, but it may be unlike any field trial you ever run. And I've had field trial guys come in and go, "Man, they would never do this at a field trial." And I'm like, "Well, you're not at a field trial."
That's right. That's why we do what we do.
and that's why some people like it.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can talk to the dog in every series, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You show
Absolutely.
steadiness in every series and you're releasing yourself. When the last bird hits the ground, you're released to send your dog. We don't take birds from you at the line. You can talk to the dog. We don't release you. Um, it's SRS.
So if you had a quad and you were trying to push and pull the dog a little bit, you could tell him here, here, or heel, heel,
Absolutely.
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 Yep.
even in the
we
field
also,
trial.
are a little different in that we're very liberal about what you can say to the dog in the field as well. At a field trial, if you say the word here or say the word no, it's death. In my opinion, the way we communicate with that dog, it shouldn't matter. In our rules, we say that any, whistle, voice, command, or cast is acceptable, but then we turn around and say, well, that's not really the case. You can't say no to the dog. But in my opinion, and what SRS, the stance they take, it's more about it's not as much about what you say, but how you say it. If you can say the word no while the dog's in the field, as long as we don't feel like it's intimidation.
Yep.
There's a big difference between saying the word no and screaming the word no to a dog. You can be just as intimidating to that dog when you walk up to the line and say the word sit. So we take more of a stance of it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it.
Well, Carrie, you got anything to add to the discussion? You're going to be judging here. You got any questions?
No, I'm just listening. It's a blast to do, and your imagination can take you anywhere you want to go. You can make it much more like hunting. It's a team sport. I think that's the hardest thing for people to get through their head. You've got to use the strategy, and you've got to be a team with your dog. And you get all the other rules mixed in, and it's just, what do we need to do to get through, and how can I help my dog be successful on it?
Yep.
through the thing, just like, oh, we're not quite going there like Margot, she handled. That's how they became successful. You're looking to complete the series successfully, and what do you need to do to get there? I guess that's kind of how I viewed it. It was very interesting. It was fun. Sometimes you have to be very quick with marking on the pencils and the whistles. I learned that in the third series last year.
Yeah, that third series.
So what happens if you and your co-judge don't quite have the same score after the dog runs?
So we have a score sheet, and it's that is part of the reason we use this sheet is because Derek's sitting there and he's watching what's going on, and so let's say Carrie and Tracy are judging, and we get to the end of that run and they're 25 points apart. We can look back at that score sheet from a marshal standpoint and what myself and Derek do, and I can pretty much tell where you're off because on the right side of that score sheet you total each one of the marks, and I can look over there and go, you know what, Tracy is 20 points higher on Mark 2 than Carrie is. Well, why is he 20 points higher? Well, Tracy marked that as a handle to the area and Carrie did not. So at that point, we just look and go, hey, Carrie, was that a handle to the area or in the area? She goes, well, it was definitely to the area. Well, maybe she forgot to mark it. Or Carrie says, you know what, I disagree. I thought he was in the area or whatever. At that point, we can have that discussion. And, a lot of times when they get to the end, they're going to be 3 or 4 points apart. And we just average it at that point because, human nature is, the subjective side of things. When you're that close, the only time I ever don't average them is, if we're 15, 20 points apart, somebody probably either missed something or, they were off somewhere. Tracy forgot to write down a mark score on one of the marks. That's easy to see right there. Hey, Tracy, the reason you're off, what'd you, on 1 to 3, what'd you give him for a mark score? Oh, crap, I forgot to write that down. So that's what that score sheet is designed to do, is to make it easy to figure out where we're at and why we're off. And it works pretty good for 95, 98% of the time.
One of the things I found very interesting in the SRS side is, as a field trial judge myself and a hunt test judge,
Mhm.
it's been so ingrained into me to draw it out. I have to draw it out to see what the dog's doing. So you guys are not doing that there
You
at
can't
all.
do it. You can't. You know, I
Yeah.
guess it was 4 or 5 years ago at the Crown. What's his name? He was Handler of the Year for AKC this year. I can't think of his name. Um, yeah, he runs the Grand too, Tracy. Mississippi, uh, Cajun guy. Or he did run the Grand. He doesn't really anymore.
Ronnie Lee.
Ronnie Lee.
Ronnie Lee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Ronnie Lee was judging, and he come up to me before the first series, and I said, Ronnie, I said, man, you're going to struggle, if you want to draw these out. I said, you can't keep up. It's just not our game. That's not how we do it. You can't draw and keep up with the scoring system. He said, I'll be all right. I'll be all right. I said, look, man, I'm just telling you, you can't do it. Well, he goes on, and we get through the first series, and he comes up to me, and he said, man, he said, I was wrong. I said, what are you talking about, Ryan? I mean, what do you mean? He said, man, you can't draw that stuff out. You can't keep up. I was like, look, man, I tried to tell you, brother. I've been doing this a long time, and it's different. Most judges, when they first come in, they look at it and they're intimidated by the scoring system. But once they get going and get a feel for it, it's not hard. You're judging the exact same thing at an SRS that you are at a hunt test or a field trial. You're just doing it in a little different way, and you're assigning a point value to it. And after about 5 or 6 dogs, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like that was your first time last year judging, right? I mean, after a few dogs, it's not hard. It's just different.
It's different. When you first start off, for me, between the ground and the field trials and the AKC and all the other stuff, it was harder for me to judge because I had to get used to the ticks. But by the time the third and fourth series came along, it was pretty easy, and you can actually enjoy it more. I think because you're actually paying closer attention to what the dogs are doing, and you're not so busy judging. You're just ticking real quick in your particular area. But I found I told everybody it was the hardest, but it was without a doubt the funnest event I have ever judged.
So Carrie, as you're judging and you're thinking, oh God, is that a 5 point? Is that a 10 point? Is that, I mean, how are you keeping all that straight?
In the beginning, I feel like you probably are.
Yeah, but it was, you have it set up, the score sheets, if I remember correctly, it's like whistle, whistle, whistle. So you have the marks right there. So you're just ticking and marking. It's pretty intuitive once you get started on it. And my co-judge and I mean, we were pretty darn close. Yeah, occasionally we were 10 or 12 points off, but from what I remember, we were pretty darn close. And we had never judged together before. So in fact, we just kind of met the night before, and when we were setting things up, going over philosophies, and I felt like we were pretty much on the same page. Derek can probably answer if he felt like we were that way, or, I had a blast. That's all I can say. It was great. And I hope someday I can run one.
I think one of the things that a lot of judges like in that situation is when that dog gets done running and y'all tabulate your score, and let's just say one of you has 5, one has 36, or one has 37, and we say, all right, the score's 36. It's over for that dog. Like, there's no going back and going, well, I wonder. It's not like a field trial where you got to go at the end of each series and you kind of got to rank and drop dogs and do all that. When you give that score, we post the score, and it's over. It is what it is.
That's right. That's it.
And I think some judges like that side of it, where I don't have to go back and, kind of assign value to that after the fact.
Yep. Yeah, and Kerry, like I've said before, I think you picked up very quickly what the scoring system was about, and I think you and Tony worked great together. And I don't remember you guys having any big discussions about differences in the scoring. I think y'all
No,
were
I mean,
pretty close.
yeah, and the dogs really even for the one pro handler who was there, he was really nice. I mean, he was pretty surprised at the I guess the terrain there at the grounds and things and such. But the teams that stood out, they naturally came to the top. There was no, Steve, the dog Steve. I mean, that dog was absolutely phenomenal. The gentleman who won the amateur.
Yeah.
He's actually on here, Carrie. Jim is
okay.
He's sitting right there.
Hi.
Steve is quite a cool little dog. And we have we actually have a couple of our winners on here. We have Katie on here. Katie, I can't remember what place you took in the pro division.
Second, I think.
She took second. So we've got some of our pros. Oh, she took fourth. And then we had a couple of our amateurs who are not on here who took second, third. I had the gracious ability to get sixth because I picked up the poison bird, but she had to rerun the blind and did okay. But yeah. I guess my question is, anybody that's on here, I know Steve, I know Jim is going to run it with Steve. I know Mike's going to run it. I know Katie's going to run it. Any of the other people on here, are you thinking of running it? And if you have any questions, this is the time to ask it for sure. We just wung it. If you really honest, we really just wung it, and we had a lot of fun. Because we had no idea what we were doing.
No, but even after running it once and having some idea now, it's still, I need to be better at trying to figure it out and how to do better, especially with the scoring part of it.
You and Jim can't be dumpster diving for this person.
We were dying to find out what our scores were, so we had to go dive into the dumpster and get the judges' sheets.
Well, that's a big part of it, Mike.
Yeah, right.
There's definitely a strategy to the teamwork. I don't know, Tracy, would you say that's the case? Or I don't know how much trouble we can cause this year, but I'm sure we could cause a smidge bit.
I think the strategy is how you win, is knowing what your dog's strengths are and what your strengths are as a handler and what that dog's going to do, that, and the amateur can come in there and if he really understands his dog and he can win, and challenge the dog and don't ever give up. You just got to be the lowest number of points to win.
Yeah.
Well, what I really like about the Treasure State Retriever Club grounds is that the grounds are natural. And I call it the great equalizer, especially with field trialers that are used to running on smooth ground and, very little terrain and stuff. These are natural, rough mountain grounds. And there's a lot of pushing and pulling to dogs and how they mark and run blind. So I'm excited to see some of the new pros out of the area come up and run and get their thoughts on how they do.
Yeah, you guys have some great grounds.
I feel like, especially from both from the pro and the amateur side, that's one of the things that's attractive to handlers is that, we really try to make it a team sport. We want the handler to be involved. It's not like at a field trial where we're just going to put the mark out there and you're either going to go with them or you're not. We try to involve the handler in the test. whether it be making a decision on which mark to pick up first, whether, just like I was explaining the second series from last weekend, you could take the poison bird aspect of that test out if you wanted to completely. All you had to do was know your dog off the go bird and come around and pick the right hand bird. And at that point, you don't have a poison bird. Or you could pick up the go bird as it was intended and hopefully try to handle past that bird. So I encourage my judges to set up tests that not only challenge the dog, but also challenge the handler.
When you say that, do you mean as far as like dictating like what order they can pick that up?
So in that scenario, we had a grand style HRC style triple you shot from the line, and it was the middle bird came out first, the right hand bird came out second, and then you swung all the way back, and the left hand bird was your go bird, and then you picked up any one mark, and then you had to run your blind. Well, your right hand,
Okay.
your blind was within 5 yards of the right hand mark. You had to run past it with the wind blowing off of the bird into the scent cone of the blind. So at that point, you had a decision to make. You get up there,
Right,
you
cool.
You don't have to pick the go bird up. You can pick up any one mark you want. You could come around and
Yep.
tell your dog, hey, let's pick up the right hand bird, and then run around, and that bird's not there to be a poison bird anymore. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah. Oh yeah, totally, for sure. That's the fun side to it, is like, as if you were hunting and know off
Yep.
that you got to go here and go there.
That's right.
Thank you for that. And
No.
I guess Margot knows my question is like, how do you win? I'm gonna sit down and read rules and get more educated on it. Definitely, if you guys put on a seminar, shoot out there from Washington and join that. There was one thing in particular that my best dog did that she never does. My dog doesn't do that. She ran out and popped for about a second, and then came in and got her bird, and Luke and I were like neck and neck. I was like, come on, just a few more points. That was the funnest part, was the element of like, man, Luke and I were like 2 points off from each other. So on that specific question, I guess, we're not in the field. You didn't see what happened. On a handle versus a pop, what would be a preference, or what is a thing for SRS that is a safety if that were to happen?
So in that situation, the dog goes out and pops. A pop in SRS is 5 points. Now,
Okay.
if you have to engage the dog and handle to the area of the fall at that point, you're getting 2 for the whistle and 20 for the handle to the area, plus your mark score. Now, if that dog goes out and pops and works it out on his own, you can engage the dog and he just goes out there and gets the bird. All you're getting is your 5 points for the pop and then your mark score.
Yep.
So that's another one of those where strategy comes in. Okay, what do I do in this situation as a handler?
Yeah, you got to know your dog.
Yep. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Good to know.
Yeah.
So something for you judges too, that if you ever judge it. So we say that it's actually 2 points for every whistle, but that's not actually the case. It's 2 points for every cast. And the reason I say that is because every cast must be preceded by a whistle.
That's right.
Let's just say a pop. In Katie's scenario there, the dog goes out and pops. And she sits there and waits it out for a little whatever amount of time. And she's like, yeah, he ain't moving. And she has to engage the dog and cast the dog. Whether it be, let's just say it was on blind and the mark's not involved. She has to engage the dog to get it to go. She didn't blow a whistle. But she gets 2 points for the cast because every cast must be preceded by a whistle. Does that make anybody not understand what I'm saying there? So
if you gave one cast and she got the bird, you're just 2 points.
Correct. Well, no, if she popped, then it's 5 plus 2. So think
Okay.
about this. This is another scenario where that comes into play. Let's say you're running a blind and you get past the blind, it's kind of hard to judge or whatever. You get past the blind and you blow a whistle. And you blow a come-in whistle at that point. That first come-in whistle is your cast for that whistle. And a lot of guys will go, tweet, 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 tweet. Every one of those is a cast and is getting 2 points.
Yes.
After the first one, you get the first one for free because you blew the whistle anyway. Now, every one of those is a cast, and every cast has the potential to be a cast refusal. So, a lot of times those come-in whistles can really add up, and guys don't understand, well, where did all my points come from?
Yes.
And he was 40 yards past that bird, and you sat over there and just gave come-in whistle after come-in whistle, and he's going the opposite way, and you're still blowing a come-in whistle. Well, that's 7 points every time you blow that come-in whistle, because Fido is just not having it, and he's going the other way.
Yep.
So 7 points every time you blow a come-in whistle adds up.
Yep.
So that's the same thing as stopping the dog and then signaling here or telling it to come here without a whistle. And if it doesn't, that's a cast refusal, right?
It could be. Yes, if the dog does not come here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's no different than you blowing the whistle and just saying here, here, here. Every one of those is a cast. And it adds up. Those are some of the things that people don't realize. They don't see it coming, and it can add up a lot. Something else
That's what Luke said.
it add up quick.
He said,
You
you
know.
just got to know, the point system to know, like, cause I talked to him and he was like super helpful to everybody. It was like, hey, what should you do? And my little brain doesn't comprehend like one time asking a question. So he's like, the more you learn this game and know like what will save your butt. And he did tell me back then what it was, but, in other words, there's a way, it's not trickery, but there's a way to do less points if a dog does XYZ.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what I got to learn.
Sure. One of the other things that I think is worth discussing is how we judge blinds. It's kind of opposite of the way we judge a blind at a hunt test or a field trial, in that, from our standpoint, the more whistles you blow, the more points you get. Where in reality, we want you to challenge the line of the blind. So the more whistles you blow, technically, if the dog's taking those casts and working with you, it shouldn't really count against you, but it kind of does. So the way we combat that is I always tell my judges to, what good dog work looks like. And we want to reward good dog work, and we want to penalize bad dog work. And on a blind, some handlers will send that dog and whether they're avoiding a poison bird or avoiding a factor, let that dog get out and get in a position that is a better for them to run the blind, but it's not really challenging the line of the blind. And we used to use the word corridor, and Tracy loves, I know he loves that phrase.
Yeah, all us grand guys love that word.
Yeah. We don't have a corridor in the blind.
No.
So, and technically speaking, we don't at SRS either. But you also, as a judge, are looking at that blind and you go, a good blind should be run down this path. And you give a little bit of latitude on each side. Whereas if you come out and you let that dog get outside of that good path, and the judges feel like you were intentionally doing that to make it easier for you to run that blind, we'll have an avoidance penalty, avoiding the test. I'll give you 10 points, every time you're outside of this area or whatever on that blind. Or it doesn't have to be 10, it can be 10 or 5 or 2, depending on the severity of what you're doing and how tight your path is. But that's how we reward good dog work on a blind, is by penalizing bad dog work, by penalizing the guy that is not challenging the blind. The biggest pet peeve, and a lot of judges, you're almost trying to cheat my test by not challenging my blind. And you can penalize a dog for doing that on a blind in SRS by giving him that penalty.
I noticed during the Crown that when they were running those great big long field trial blinds, none of the handlers were wearing or used binoculars. Is that allowed?
Absolutely. You can use whatever you want. Yeah, it is. And there's some that do. We had 2 or 3 handlers this weekend in our third series, that water blind, using binoculars. Yeah. But, like I said, we want you to really challenge the line to the blind, because we also know that we're penalizing you for blowing more whistles. And we're penalizing you for doing that, for challenging the line to the blind in some instances. So we really have to reward you. And the only way we can do that is by penalizing the guy that doesn't, and penalizing him pretty severely. You get outside of that quote unquote corridor and you're giving cast, and you're blowing a whistle, you're getting a cast refusal, and you're outside that corridor, that's 17 points a pop. 10 for the avoidance test, 5 for the cast refusal, and 2 for the whistle. We can really penalize a dog that is not challenging our blind quickly, and really reward the dog that does. I'm going to come up and run the blind in 3 whistles, and the guy behind me comes up and really runs the blind like he's supposed to, but he blows 10 whistles. We got to be able to work that math out.
Well, I know in the fourth series of the event that we had at Treasure State last year, there was a log that the dog had to jump over. And I don't think that log was more than maybe 4 feet wide. And Carrie can correct me. But I remember Luke Coor asking, well, what's the corridor to this blind? And Carrie's co-judge said, it's the width of that log. And they went, whoa, because there was a real tight corridor.
That's where Derek's got to jump in with our judges and say, look, if they're going to ask questions like that, the handlers are, be careful how you answer them, in that, because the corridor on that, it couldn't have been that tight. Like, I mean, you've got to give them an opportunity to run the blind, but that log is an obstacle on the blind that at that point of the blind, yeah, that's the corridor. It's that wide. But just at that point, I mean, you got to give them some leeway. You got to jump the log, or you're going to get a major penalty. It's nothing different than getting on a point, or or missing a piece of water. That's what we can give major penalties for factors on a blind. I don't like giving major penalties for like missing a piece of water on a mark or something, because at that point, we're judging control more than we're judging handling. I mean, more than we're judging marking.
Yeah.
What is your advice for new folks coming into the game? What is the best advice you could give them to give them a little encouragement to try this sport?
Like Cody said, when you get to the test, find a Luke Coor and hang on to stand beside him all day, because guys like Luke will really help you, understand what's going on, because he's one of those guys that at the end of the day, the best dog's going to win, but understanding a little bit about what's going on, and he's not going to hesitate to help you and encourage you in any way that he can. And I think from what Katie's saying, that a testament to what he actually did. He's he's a champion of SRS and wants to see it be successful. And he knows that if people understand the game, they're a whole lot more likely to come back and run again. From me, and that's the best piece of advice I can give you is find somebody like that to help you.
He actually offered to come out a week ahead of time,
Yeah.
do some kind of drill training with us if we want. I mean, we absolutely would love to have him do that. He was
Yeah, you guys should put that on and charge for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should let folks know. Yeah.
he
wouldn't take the
he
money.
really is a good ambassador to the SRS,
Mhm.
especially out here for us that we didn't know. We were asking, he was asking the right questions at the briefings that we were clueless. Like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And those guys they're asking those questions not only for the other people, the other handlers, but he understands that he's asking it for the judges as well. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times they ask those questions and the judge never thought about this, and it's something that's gonna happen. Like falling out of the mud hut, what's my penalty for coming out of the hide?
Yeah.
Well,
I
we
mean,
didn't really think about that, but we need to.
now, Matt, I know you're doing seminars. Are you
Mhm.
are you doing seminars for the marshals or for the judges or anybody? How does the seminars that you're doing, what are they targeted for?
They're targeted for the handler, the seminars that we're doing. We, every now and then we have, and Shannon's wanting to have, and she's got a little bit of one, the video that goes out with, and I think it went to the judges in an email. It's a kind of a marshal slash judges, briefing a little bit. But the seminars that are out there are handler seminars. Very similar to what we're doing here, other than the fact that, we're kind of in attendance and we have kind of a schedule of topics that we're talking about from our end. We go through scoring. The biggest and hardest thing to understand in our game is how we judge marks, how we score marks.
Right.
And so we go through that quite a bit. Just like I talked about the blinds, we'll draw out some blinds and some examples of, what we're looking for and how we're judging. But it's more, the seminars that are out there should be more geared toward the handler than anything.
Are they field seminars or are they just classrooms?
Both, some, so, we had one last year on a Thursday night before the test.
Okay.
Where the handlers could come in and it wasn't a field seminar. It was simply, let's go sit through, we've got a whiteboard here and we can draw some stuff out. You can ask questions, kind of like what we're doing here, but not in a Zoom call setting. There are some seminars that and obviously they're charging more for those, where we may have a Friday night sit down like this where we order pizza and we go through exactly what we're doing here. And then the next day we're going to go set up a test where you can run your dog and we can tell you how we're scoring as we're going. And you understand hands-on a lot more about what's going on.
Are you predominantly the one doing those seminars or are there other marshals doing it? Who's
It
doing
just
it?
depends. It varies depending on where we're at. I think Stephen and Leo have done one somewhere. We did one in Central Arkansas, myself and Larry McMurray. It just depends. It's hard to go in very much because of every weekend available we have events. But if you're interested in something like that, and obviously in Montana, it's hard for us to get out there to do those, but we
Well,
gotta figure it out.
the reason I ask is because, SRS is new to this region and, my MO is all about growth, right?
Absolutely.
I help grow the HRC out here. And if we can get the SRS growing where our local folks have the opportunity to run a couple of them and gain some points for their, their
Mhm.
titles and stuff like that, that would be awesome.
So, the suggestions that we give a lot of in like people in your situation, as a club, if you can get somebody in your area that understands SRS like Luke or, somebody that's out there for the summer or whatever, and have a fun hunt, a weekend fun hunt where they can come out and set up some SRS scenarios and kind of tell you how that would be scored and, things like that. That encourages, in my mind, encourages people to get involved and understand a little bit better about what's going on, because it's one of those, it's really hard unless you just dive in and say, hey, I'm just going to take the plunge and go out there and run it and see what happens. And have a guy like Luke there that'll kind of explain stuff to you. It's different, It's hard to understand the scoring. I mean, they walk off the line and you want a 50. He's like, holy cow, where did I get a 50 from?
Well,
I picked the marks up clean. How do I get a 50?
that's a great idea. That might be something I can reach out to Luke and see if he's interested in
Yeah.
coming out, because he did offer to come out like the week before. I don't know what he's got going on the weekend before, but
Yeah.
a lot of our folks are working people. But the way it works out here, Matt, you've never been out here. Encourage you to come out here at some point and see these grounds and see just how challenging they are, because
Sure.
we threw birds and we're throwing plastic this year.
Yeah.
And I can
that's the way
guarantee
to
you we're
go.
going to have a whole lot more answers out of the plastic, because our cover and our terrain is just going to eat up dogs with plastic for sure.
Derek told me a bit about it, so
Huh?
Derek told me a little bit about it last year after he got back, and
Yeah, Derek's jealous he can't come out and hang out all summer. So, but he was going to hang out all summer and train his puppy.
Well,
Well,
watch out, you may have to run him off.
Well,
yeah,
so
I was gonna,
I'll
I, most people don't know what's going on here, but I was planning on going back, and because I've got a new puppy and staying all summer in the Montana area. But my youngest daughter informed us just after Thanksgiving that she's pregnant again. So we're gonna have a new grandbaby, and it's due in the first week of
July.
July. So I couldn't. That squashed our plans to do that. But I did tell Margot. I said, "Well, I'll fly out there and marshal your test, but I can't come for the whole summer." And I was scheduled to judge actually three other tests out that way. So yeah, I'm kind of disappointed in that, but I'm happy to have a new grandson that was a big surprise. So
Well, and I want to thank Tracy for agreeing to come out here. I know him and Carrie and her husband John got a lot of history. John took Tracy elk hunting and duck hunting, and so it's kind of like a coming home for Tracy to come out and hang out with John and Carrie, and so we're gonna just have a lot of fun. But I may get a sidebar with Mike and see what if Luke wants to come out and maybe offer some kind of a 1 day kind of seminar the weekend before, because we talked about doing a workshop on blind running, poison bird drills, but maybe this would be a better opportunity for our folks coming out to run the SRS pro and amateur alike, because we have a lot of local pros like Katie and a few others that are going to come and run it. And I just think if we could level the playing field so they at least know how they're being scored, it would be fun.
No,
yeah, I think Luke would probably agree to that.
yeah, I agree, Margot. Anything that we can do to try and get a few more of these events out this way would be beneficial to those of us that are running it, because it's way too far for us to go back into the central and eastern U.S. to run an SRS.
I also think that more events or seminars that you put on out here, even if it's Montana, I think that would really help bring SRS out West Coast more.
I don't disagree. It's just it's very difficult financially, just like it's difficult financially for y'all to come run these events out here. It's difficult for us to get out there, and that's why I'm saying, you take Luke, if you can get him out there the weekend before and maybe find him a place to stay during the week and some training grounds in exchange for that or whatever. That's how you get that accomplished. For
Yeah,
us, send
put on
somebody
the
to Montana and put on a seminar, the costs are just gonna be.
Yeah, they'd have to pay or per,
Yeah.
however the dollar amount works to fly him out, put him up in a hotel, that whole debacle when everybody else does like seminars. But I'd gladly pay for, one
Oh,
day
yeah.
for me is not enough. I think at least two, but if it were a 3-day Friday or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I mean, or whatever you guys decide, I mean, I'd definitely pay, several $100 just to get educated more on the scoring.
Well, he's probably going to be in North Dakota or South Dakota anyway, so he shouldn't be that far away from you.
Me go that far?
Well, from you, yeah, he's going to be a long ways, but Treasure State, he won't be that far away.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this has been fantastic, and I'm going to share this with the club members here. I'm recording this so they can tune in if they weren't able to watch this this evening. So I want to thank Matt and Derek and our two judges that are going to judge this year for attending here tonight. This has been something I think is much needed for our members to help with this event in the this year and hopefully years to come. So I think that's about an hour and a half of talking. I think that's good enough. So I think we'll end it here. And again, thank you everybody for tuning in. And if anyone has any questions about it, shoot me an email or shoot an email to the secretary account for Treasure State. So again, thank you everyone.
Thank
Hey,
you for
Mike.
organizing it.
Yeah, I want to say the same thing. Thank you, Mike, for putting all this together, and thank you for all you do for Treasure State. I told Margot the other day I'm really impressed with what you guys are doing. So thank y'all.
Yep. Okay.
And
Good night, everybody.
if you guys have any questions going forward, don't hesitate to give me a shout.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
All right,
Good night.
Good night.